Good evening, everyone. My name is Akol Agwek, and I'm the moderator for today's forum for Burlington City Council, Ward 5. We have three candidates this evening who are contesting for the seat of Ward 5 for the City Council. The candidates are Ben Traves, Farid Munasia, and Lenora E. Travis. These are the three candidates who are contesting for that ward. And I will go ahead and read the ground rule. First, the candidates will have 1 minute opening statement, and then all candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to questions. There may be questions from the public, in which case we will take those. All candidates will be given the opportunity to respond to questions from the public. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to ask a question of the other candidates. All candidates are allowed 30-second rebuttals. Candidates have 30 seconds closing comments. Questions. I, as the moderator, will select from the following questions, as well as take questions from the members of the public who will call in. Again, the priority is given to the members of the public. When they call in, I will take their questions and you will have the opportunity to answer those questions. So without further ado, I will go ahead and start the forum right now. First of all, it will be 45 minutes. We will stop at 6:15 exactly. And so let me begin by asking the candidates. Each one of you will have 2 minutes to explain, to tell us why you are running and what will be different for Burlington if you are elected. So let me begin with the way the candidates are listed. Ben Travis, you have 2 minutes to go ahead.
Well, thank you, Akol, and thank you to Town Meeting TV for hosting this forum. I've always appreciated Town Meeting TV and the great service that it plays for our community. Hello, and thank you to Lenora and Farid as well. Looking forward to the discussion tonight. And thanks for everyone who's tuning in, either live tonight, or I know this will be recorded. So if you're recording this, thank you for watching. My name is Ben Travers. My family and I have lived in Burlington for most of this past decade. I work as a lawyer downtown, but the focus of my life is on our 3 kids and my wife. Our oldest, Lola, is a 6-year-old and first grader at Champlain Elementary, right here in Ward 5 on Pine Street. Our 4-year-old Jack and our 7-month-old Zoe attend preschool here in Burlington. I'm running because I believe our city council needs to recommit itself to vital local issues. The lights we turn on in our house, the water that comes from our faucets, the roads, sidewalks, bike lanes we take to and from work, the parks we play in with our kids, all depend on effective local government. I believe our city council, again, needs to recommit itself to these issues. I'm running for city council and I'm listed on the ballot as a Democrat, but I'm not entering this race with political bias or agenda. My goal is to approach the city council as a fair-minded consensus builder, working with others to cut through political divisiveness, to make progress on issues that matter to our community, like affordable housing, affordability, public safety, sustainable infrastructure. I'm looking forward to discussing these issues tonight, to introducing myself as a candidate and talking a bit more about my experience in the community, like on our neighborhood planning assembly, our parks commission, and our housing board, and look forward to a good discussion with Farid and Lenora. Thank you, Akol.
Thank you. Exactly 2 minutes. Farid, you have your 2 minutes.
Thank you, Akol. My name is Farid. I've lived in Ward 5 for most of my life, 25 years now. and I am running as a volunteer for an electoral project that aim to revive direct democracy, to strengthen it, and to expand the mechanism and the culture of direct democracy in Burlington. I think Burlington works best when people are able to participate in making the decisions that impact our lives. And I believe that there's a critical need for us to reform how these processes are. We are famous and have a reputation as a progressive city. Everybody thinks it's like Bernie's like hometown, but I feel like what makes Burlington great has been weakened, and that is the participation of its people. If I win like the city council, I don't think, honestly, there's not much gonna be any difference unless some of these fundamental changes are applied, because you know, the city council, even when all 12 of them agree on one thing, it's already challenging. And so I think there needs to be more participation by regular people, not just people who can afford to pay attention. And so we hope to enshrine some of these rights for us to participate in decision making in our city charter that needs to be updated. And so that's what I'm hoping to do.
Thank you so much, Farid. Exactly 2 minutes. Lenora, your 2 minutes.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I am Lenora Travis, and I am running for City Council for Ward 5. I've lived in Burlington, Vermont for 5 years since I came to this state, and followed my younger son here. I have 2 sons. One served in Afghanistan. He is still stationed in New Jersey, and my youngest one chose here. So I'm glad he did, because I found that I love it here. I'm running on humanity and for infrastructure and affordable housing, and to find other places and other outlets for our displaced people that are here in Vermont to go to and to feel safe. I feel that infrastructure is also a very good, important thing. We see a lot of that going on now, which we're very glad to see taking place, even though it can be a nuisance for a lot of people getting out, you know, going out and about and having detours and things. But I want to stay focused on mostly the people, because so much has happened here since this pandemic. And I was walking around yesterday with a friend of mine, and you see so many places that are no longer there. I pointed out Mirabelle's and a couple of places on Church Street and the candy store. And so many people lost their businesses, as well as some lost their place to live, their job. So many people have been affected, and the pandemic brings us closer to a reality that we need to build on what we have and do better, and try and pick ourselves up after this devastating battle that we have gone through with COVID and financial situations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lenora. Now, let me go ahead and ask questions. The first questions is related to your opening statement, which is to say, what is your experience? What experience do you think bring you to bear that make you qualified to be a Burlington City Council member? So let me begin with you, Lenora. I'm going the other way. Yes. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, I think that because the personal experiences that I have had a challenge with when I first got here. I'm someone that moved here from North Carolina with a plan. I had been in touch with 7 days and found a place to rent, and packed up everything I had and came across from North Carolina, upstate New York, and right over into Vermont. However, the place I was supposed to have rent fell through. The gentleman had a problem with the closing on his new home, so he couldn't move out and I couldn't move in. So I think my experience that led me down to where I was spending so much money on hotels and still trying to find a place to move into just went down a dark place. And my son and I both wound up looking for places to stay. So I know what it's like to be on the streets in Burlington and the outsiding areas looking for services from people, churches, other facilities that are opened, like winter, except cold weather exceptions, when we would be able to get a room because it was so cold that they didn't want anybody outside. I've experienced all that, and having to look places to go to Red Door Church for soup and sandwich on Sunday, to take a shower, and then get back out into the elements to fight ongoing procedures of trying to find a place to live and be settled in this beautiful state.
Thank you. Thank you, Lenora. Ben, your 2 minutes, what qualification do you bring to this job?
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks for that answer, Lenora. I think lived experience is really important. And Lenora, you and I had a chance to speak before tonight, and I really value the lived experience that you're bringing to this discussion. For me, myself, let me first talk about my experience as a dad of young kids. We don't have a whole lot of folks in the city council right now who have young kids in the Burlington school system. As I mentioned before, I got 2 young kids in childcare here. We are living the struggles with finding affordable quality childcare in Burlington. My first grader should be perhaps one of the first classes to move into a new high school. Our city needs a new high school, and like a lot of parents in Burlington, I am personally invested in making sure that we get a high school that is deserving of our community and that is deserving of our children. I'd like to also talk about my professional experience. I'm an attorney, I'm a lawyer. Chip Mason is currently our Ward 5 City Councilor, and he's the only lawyer on the City Council. He's served well on the Ordinance Committee. The Ordinance Committee doesn't do a whole lot of glorious work, but it does really important works on the nuts and bolts of how our city works and operates. And I think a lawyer's perspective, a legal perspective is really important to that. And I would be more than open to following in Chip's footsteps on the Ordinance Committee. And finally, community is something that really matters to me. I've always worked to find a part of my life to give back to the community. It's why when I was a renter living in the Five Sisters neighborhood, I joined the Burlington Housing Board of Review to help tenants and landlords resolve security deposit disputes. It's why after I became a dad, I joined the Parks Commission, of which I'm now the chair, to be a better steward of our outdoor spaces. And it's why I've spent 5 years on our neighborhood planning assembly, building more open, inclusive spaces for community dialogue. I've spent years working with and hearing from neighbors and developing a deep understanding as to how our city operates. And I think that experience will really serve me well as a city councilor.
Thank you. Thank you. Farid, your 2 minutes.
I'm over 18 and I live in Burlington, so I'm technically qualified to run for city council. I think, these kind of questions always bother me a little bit because I think it's great that Ben is running and it's great that Lenora is running. I think like the question like we should be asking is how can we include everybody? How can we allow participation from people who actually care? I mean, obviously, like at least now we have 3 people who care. I really value like Ben's like expertise and knowledge and all his work in the community. And I do think like I told Lenora, I'm so glad like she's also in this race because we need to hear what she has to say. And I think, I believe my experience like lately, especially is that it's been frustrating to see such a innovative community, such a creative community, such a caring community that gets I would say like that, but like the government is not really taking full advantage of what we have to offer because right now the limitation is we go to election and all we get to choose like just one person to make all these other important decisions on behalf of the rest of us. It just can't be that one person could be, have more qualification to represent 5,000 people or so. I feel also I've experienced like disappointment in that like the turnout for elections are so low. So I think we have some proposals that the campaign that I'm a volunteer for. We have some proposals, concrete proposals to improve the system so that it becomes more participatory for everybody.
Thank you, Farid. So just I will continue asking questions so that the members or public can hear your position on those. Question about taxes. How do you respond to the ballot item requesting a raise to the city tax rate by 4% this year? I will begin with you, Farid.
I would hesitate to support like any new taxes. I feel like the budget is like something that's like so disconnected from me, and like I don't feel like I know enough about it. I feel like I don't think there's any way for me to influence the budget of the city. But it's a very important document. It's a very important process that I feel most of us feel excluded. I would say I would not support any increase in taxes until there is some really critical like reform in the way that we set our budget, because I do think a budget is a moral document. It basically outlines our values. What do we prioritize as a community? And right now it's not transparent and it's not accessible to most people. I think the city could do a much better job in educating us. They could also do a much better job in soliciting input from us and inviting just regular people to participate in the creation of the budget. I think there are many municipalities who have implemented a participatory budgeting process. We don't have to turn over the entire however many millions the city budget is currently at, but we could start with like a portion of it that we could allocate to the different neighborhood planning assembly, for example, for a process that's more participatory, so that we understand what the money is being used for, and there's more discussion of that, because it is our money.
Thank you, Farid. Lenora, you have the floor for 2 minutes on taxes.
Thank you. I do agree with Farid. I'm sorry, I missaid your name. I do agree that taxes is something that we shouldn't even be thinking about right now, raising taxes. There are so many people that had so many personal damages with their income and their business. Like I said, since the pandemic, which has controlled a lot of things that have happened in our life. Everything is more expensive. Food is more expensive. Everything on your daily basis is putting more money into gas, is more expensive. Everything has changed. And it's like, to ask somebody to be susceptible to raising taxes by 4%, I believe it is, I think would just be a struggle for people that are already struggling. I don't see any sense in that right now. So I'm totally against raising the taxes on people that are trying to get by one step at a time every day.
Thank you, Lenora. Ben, you have the floor, 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think in answering this question, it's important for us to first be mindful that a lot of folks, especially in the South End and Ward 5, already had a property tax increase this year as a result of a property reassessment that, in my opinion, did not follow best practices. Folks in the South End, really throughout the city, but I would say especially in Ward 5 in the South End, a more undue burden has been placed on them, and they've already had property tax increases this year. So we need to keep that in mind when we talk about any matter that's going to increase taxes, especially since with increased assessments on the Ward 5, any future property tax increases are going to have all that more undue a burden on those folks whose assessments were increased more. The city has a lot of federal funds available to it right now. This is not something that's always there. So I would encourage the city to do everything they can to use those ARPA funds on projects to avoid our having to increase taxes. The reality, though, is that inflation alone requires an increased budget to keep our city moving forward. So I understand the question is posed to us of do we approve of a 4% tax increase, but I think what's important is for us to focus on where that 4% increase is coming from, which is the capital bond that's been put on the ballot for $20-some million. And And I'm concerned because there's some really vital topics in that bond. Like, for example, we have some fire trucks that are off the road right now because of deferred maintenance. Our fire department's communications equipment is a couple decades old, and they don't even make replacement parts for it any longer. These are really vital items that are supported by that capital bond. I don't think we can put it off any longer. So while I'm reluctant and don't like the increased property taxes, I will be voting yes on that capital bond.
Just before I move on, if I am very clear, let me just put this forward. Farid said no to the increase in taxes. Lenora said no to the increase in taxes. If that's how I heard, you can correct me. Ben, can you go on record and say you are yes or no?
Well, if you look at the ballot, Akol, there's a couple different questions that have to do with taxes. One of them has to do with the school budget, but if you look at the language, it actually involves potentially a decrease in taxes of, it looks like, up to 6.5%. The ballot measure on the capital bond does not talk about an increase in taxes, so I don't know what the net gain necessarily will be. I think the appropriate question here is whether or not we support the $20 million capital bond. And the answer to that question is yes, I do, because of the really vital issues to our community that are in there.
So for the record, for the members of the public there, I will take, is it fair to say that you are saying yes?
Yes, I support the capital bond, and I would encourage neighbors to support the capital bond as well.
Okay, thank you. I thought I want that distinction to be clear. The next question is about the COVID-19 or the Covet right now. And it is basically, what are the biggest challenges facing the city right now as a result of COVID? And how can the city council address them? It is you, Ben. 2 minutes.
Yeah, so this is the issue that we're dealing with. I feel like the pandemic has stolen 2 years of our life here, coming up on the 2-year anniversary. And I know more people who have COVID right now than at any point during the pandemic. Again, as a dad of young kids, including 2 kids who unfortunately cannot be vaccinated yet because they're under 5, I'm really aware of the challenges that parents in particular have been facing with the pandemic, not only because of their own kids getting COVID, but also because of having to quarantine with close contacts and school closures over the last couple months or so. We also obviously have a lot of frontline workers, educators, healthcare workers who have been going above and beyond here. And I want to continue to give a nod to them and thanks to them as a community. But because so many folks are coming down with COVID now, or having to quarantine, or having to stay home to care for their children, my biggest concern right now is that has folks having to forego work opportunities, either to take time off from work or to forego an opportunity to work altogether. And the reality of this is, as I know the other candidates here know all too well, is that it's put too many of our neighbors in further food insecurity. It's made housing all the more unaffordable for them. And so I think the city and other partners need to do more to address those issues. And just finally, if I could say one thing, Nicole, I really appreciate Lenora's comments with respect to how COVID has impacted businesses. I think that we need to do a whole lot more to support our businesses in getting through this pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you. We are running very short on time. Lenora, your 2 minutes.
Yes, I do. Like I believe I made this statement earlier. I do believe that COVID has basically taken all of our lives hostage. They're so limited at what we can do and where we can go. And it has just basically turned everyone into trying to survive, whether it be a business, kids in school, or college students, or people in their homes. My grandbaby, her great-grandmother got COVID at 81. And it was devastating to know that, the one daughter had to take off work so she could go in and stay with her mother, because at that time, this is when it first started, that at that time, they weren't having people come into someone's home because of the epidemic being so bad. So it's situations like that, that people are looking after their elders, they're looking after other people around them in their neighborhood and stuff, trying to get people to, just step up and take care of each other, because sometimes the hospital can't do everything. They're not all, they're all in the neighborhoods watching over everyone. So I do think that, we need to step up and really stay focused on what good we can finally get when this is behind us, like building back up our businesses, seeing that so many empty places on Church Street are no longer empty. They'll be replaced by things that we liked being there, but to boost people's morale that, we can afford to do things like I said, affordable housing, and to get people off the streets and to get people into a place where they feel safer, we feel safer. Because right now there's a whole lot of hostility out there, and it's leading to bad things happening because people are frustrated, short-tempered, and just outwitting themselves. They just don't know what to do, so they make the wrong choice, and it affects all of us. So it's not just COVID, it's everything that's happening because of COVID and our lifestyles.
Thank you, Lenora. Farid, you have the floor for your 2 minutes.
I think a lot of the challenges that we're seeing, they've been going on for a while, even before the pandemic. And obviously, things like the housing crisis, also inequality, the fact that people are having to choose between paying rent and buying food. I think that has been going on for a while, and the pandemic just brought it all to a peak. And I do feel that we know, like, the pandemic has taught us that we are on, as a community, we are only as strong as the most vulnerable among us. The pandemic don't really care about your class background or your party affiliation or any of that. If somebody is vulnerable, that means the rest of us are also at risk. So I feel like there's a lot of challenges, but I also see a lot of opportunities that the pandemic has brought us. While we've seen the limitations of our municipal government, the community has risen up in response to fill in this gap. We have the mutual aid groups that are meeting the needs of people directly. And people are just helping each other. I do feel like the isolation that the pandemic has imposed on us, that could be really stressful, which is why it's so much more important for us to have a connection to the community. And I think we are adapting to that. I do think we need to really let everybody participate in making all these decisions, because the city government, they're limited. And as we see, like, our community is more than capable of stepping up and taking care of one another. So challenge, but also hope and opportunity.
Yes.
Thank you. I will keep going because as we want to squeeze in as many questions as we can before we run out of time. The next question is about racial justice. Where do you see opportunities for addressing racial justice in the city, and how will you use the city council seat to meet this challenge? Lenora, you have the floor, 2 minutes.
I don't think it'll take that long. I want racial justice, the progressives and stuff, to be voted out. I think that I am a mediator. I'm just mediator, and I'm just, I get frustrated sometimes when I, see things going in that direction. So it's kind of like I just, I don't have a whole lot to say on that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting time. Ben, racial justice.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, if I'm elected city councilor, I think it's first important to acknowledge that as a white man, I've had certain privileges in my life that others don't, and that I need to acknowledge that the lived experiences of many of my neighbors have been very different than my own. So my commitment is, first of all, to approach every issue through the lens of equity and inclusivity, and to do the best to the extent I can to put myself in the shoes of all my neighbors in looking at these issues. If the question is, where do I see opportunities for addressing racial justice? From my perspective, the answer is everywhere. And we talk about it a lot in the context of public safety, and rightfully so, given historical bias in policing. But we also need to talk about racial justice on other issues. Covet, for example, and the disparate impact it's had on communities of color. I serve on the Parks Commission, and we talk about it all the time with respect to where and how we build our parks, inclusivity in city programming and city staffing, issues related to affordable housing, affordability, tenant rights, and the disparate impacts of cost of living, transportation issues, all touch on issues of racial justice. And I will look at all these issues through that lens.
Thank you, Ben. Farid, you have the floor, 2 minutes.
I see opportunities even closer to home in Ward 5. When I attend the NPA meetings for the Neighborhood Planning Association Assembly, which is the way like we can plug in as an individual and have like our voice heard and participate in decision making about our city. So when I look at the NPA for our ward, like, honestly, like there's maybe 2 or 3 times where I have seen another person who's not white, and that's concerning because I know like our ward is actually changing in terms of demographics. So we have definitely a segment of the population that aren't being heard, that aren't being included, and I do think there is a lot that we could do there to make sure that people feel like they matter. And it's not like necessarily just based on race, because like the barriers, if we address like some of these barriers to participate, we'll have to address like when like there is limitations for in general for working families. It's like there's all kinds of challenges that make it so the people we are listening to, who are making decisions, who are being empowered, are not really like the majority of the residents in this ward, which are like we're mostly renters, we're mostly working class people, and most of us can't actually afford to attend any of these meetings. So there's a lot that we could do there.
Thank you. The next question is about the policing and community safety. What is your opinion on the recent appointment of Chief John Murat? What is your vision for community safety, and how will you support that as the city councilor? Ben, you have the floor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this has been the issue that our community's been talking about here the last couple of days, and rightfully so over the last couple of years. And when I talk to the community and public safety, I hear a couple main issues. One is, how can we continue to address historical bias in policing? And the other is, how can we best keep our communities safe? And unfortunately, I don't think we can answer either of those questions until we bring much needed stability to our police department. I'm really frustrated that our community has gone nearly 2 years without a permanent police chief. Even though the city council broadly supported increasing our police officer cap to 87 officers, the department has continued to struggle in recruiting and retaining folks. This has resulted in the elimination of really important positions like that dedicated to domestic violence victims or community affairs. And staffing shortages have placed unsustainable strains on city employees, other emergency responders, and community partners. What I'll say about John Murat is if the mayor intends on appointing him, clearly there's more work that needs to be done if he's going to secure majority support of the council. So whether through a search committee, police commission, or other public forums, I would suggest to the mayor, let's have more community dialogue so we can hear from and learn more about Chief Murat. And I would also suggest to the mayor to continue to work with city councilors to see if there's room for compromise, to see if we can make progress on some other policing issues like independent oversight of the police department or alternative public safety resources, to see if there's collaboration and a deal that can be made for us to get a permanent chief and bring some stability to the department sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Ben. Lenora, you have the floor.
Yes, I do agree with what Ben has just stated, that, we need a chief of police. It's been too long. I can't remember. I was going through my head a few days ago. When's the last time I even saw a police officer walking up Church Street? And normally they were always visible. You could always speak to them and know that they were in your presence. But apparently that I've not seen that in some time now. And I believe that a police chief handles a lot of situations. And we don't just need more police officers. We need someone to step up and be in control of the police officers and the community and everything that goes on. That's why it's so vital that we do have a police chief. It's just, so many things are happening, and it's something that I just couldn't even imagine. I mean, I grew up in small towns and in the South where we had our sheriffs and our chiefs and stuff and everything. And I was like, I can't believe it's 2 years now. So yeah, somebody's really got to, people have to really step up and figure out that this is something we need. This is not, this is a necessity.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lenora. Farid, you have the floor. Your opinion on the appointment of John Murat and community policing.
So I don't think we know enough information about what happened there in terms of like that particular appointment because I thought they had worked out the compromise and somehow at the last minute it was off the table. But I do think public safety is important, and I think we need to start addressing some of the issues. And policing is only a small part of that. And I think it's a problematic part of that. And the BPD now has it didn't just start 2 years ago. It has lost the trust of the community in terms of like it's from its leadership, and also I do think there is an unhealthy relationship between the mayor, the chief, and the police officer association. We now have had more people killed by the police in the last decade compared to any time in Burlington's history. There is something going on there that we need to address. I do think that accountability is very important. Any government official, we should always expect accountability, especially the ones who are empowered to take lives, ones who are empowered to use violence. And I think we need to start while the police commission do its job and they will negotiate with the BPD and put in some needed reforms. We need to also think about other ways that we can ensure public safety. And it just can't be at the expense of justice. I don't think stability while sacrificing justice is not really safety at all. So I guess I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are just 6 minutes left. So I will quickly squeeze in this question for 1 minute, and then each of you will have closing statement. And that is about housing. What needs to be done to address housing concern in the city? What are the biggest issues with housing, affordability, safety, and access? Lenora, you have the floor. 1 minute.
Yes. Housing is a big thing, very big issue. I think that even when I got here 5 years ago, that it wasn't as much of an issue as it is right now, because I have seen more homeless people, displaced people come and are in Burlington since I was. And I believe that, we need affordable housing, of course. We also need to find some buildings. I've been talking with the pastor of the Red Door Church, who believes also we should be looking for some buildings that are vacant to put people into, so that there isn't so many people just straggling from here and there and looking for a place to sit for a little while. Or, I mean, I know myself, when I was homeless, it was like I found a McDonald's sometimes to sit in, or a Dunkin' Donuts, 2 places that were open all night. So, I mean, you see people just hovering and going places, and this is what leads to a lot of tension. This is where, we find crime and hate and instability, because people are uneasy. People have no place to go. So affordable housing and places to put people that are displaced right now would make things a lot easier on the community and all of us in dealing with the future.
Thank you, Lenora. Ben, you have the floor, 1 minute.
Okay, it's a very broad question, Nicole, so I'll see what I can get to in 1 minute. Housing means very different things to different people. I think Lenora touched on it right. We need to first think about our neighbors who don't have a house at all. And we need to do more in our community for our houseless neighbors, like more short-term emergency housing, like some of the pieces that Lenora was talking about there, dedicating a whole lot more resources to long-term stable housing for our houseless neighbors, more low barrier and no barrier shelters, and shelters that have the right resources such that folks don't have to leave with their belongings during the day. Housing means something else to tenants, as well as folks in Burlington who are trying to afford to buy their first home. I think we need more housing in Burlington. I think the South End could play a special role in developing more housing in certain areas. I look forward to engaging with the community and seeing whether or not we can amend our zoning ordinances to see where the right place is for more housing. I was lucky enough to buy my first home in 2014. I don't know that I'd be able to afford a first home in Burlington right now, and we need to do better.
Thank you, Ben. Farid, your 1 minute.
So I believe housing is a human right. And I do think like it's become a buzzword, like now all our leaders say housing is human right, but they also want affordable housing, which is, it doesn't really, how do you reconcile? Like if it's a right, then it shouldn't be available to people who can afford it. And I do think it's the job of the government to protect this right. And obviously the model that we've been using for the last 10, 15 years of like waiting for like the private kind of model to solve our housing crisis hasn't been working. I do think, Burlington actually used to be a pioneer. We initiated like the community land trust model, for example. So we need to go back to like that kind of mindset and, be more creative. Maybe we need to convert more buildings into single resident occupancy. And I do think for renters, like code enforcement against like the landlords who are like, not like doing their end, it needs to be stepped up so that the housing that they do have is livable.
Thank you so much for respecting the time. 30 seconds for your closing statement. Lenora first. 30 seconds for your closing statement.
Yes, I'm running for City Council for 5th Ward. Because I feel that there's a lot that I can give to this community, even though I've only lived here for 5 years. I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot. I've had to jump through many hurdles to get to a place that I'm in right now. So I think that being just a human being that cares and that has the insight of knowing that people need help out there, that I would fit in very well, I believe.
Thank you. Ben, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Cole. Thank you, Lenora. Thank you for this discussion. I really appreciate running in this race with Farid and Lenora. I think they bring a lot to the table. And I think importantly, we come from different communities, and whoever gets elected here, I look forward to continuing to work with Farid and Lenora and all my constituents, bringing them to the table and working through political divisiveness and our differences, building consensus and making progress as a community. I feel like we haven't been moving forward for a couple of years here. And it's time for us to cut through some of that political divisiveness and start moving forward again. If folks want to learn more, go to bentravers.com and feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Farid, your last 30 seconds.
This is unsatisfying, huh? Like, I want to keep talking about this stuff. It's important. So I have issued a challenge to both Lenora and Ben that we would do a cook-off where we will bring food, cook food, and we're going to serve it at the neighborhoods in our community. So the first event is on Friday, the 11th at South Meadows at between 4 and 6. So come there, like let's talk to us. We want to listen to you. We'll serve you food and like let's keep this conversation going. Proposition0.org and peopleforpoliceaccountability.com is the website if you want more info about the campaign that I'm a part of.
Thank you so much, candidate. It is exactly 6:15. You respected the time, and I'm so honored to have moderated this debate, and I look forward to meeting you in person. Good luck on the campaign trail, and hope to see you soon.
Come to our cook-off.
Thank you. Bye.
See you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
It has finished the forums, and you can meet them. You can reach out to them. They are there in the city. Thank you so much. Good night.